The pressure you are feeling right now is not in your head. It arrived on schedule, precisely, inevitably, with the kind of timing that would feel almost designed if you understood why it was happening. 6 days ago, the Aries new moon set a new cycle in motion. 6 days ago, the energy was clean and directional and confident with the momentum of everything that March had been building toward. The beginning was made. The direction was clear. The first steps felt aligned. And now, on April 4th, something in that clean forward movement has met resistance, and the resistance has a texture that feels bigger than the obstacle that is causing it. More charged, more personally significant, more like a test of the decision you made at the new moon than a straightforward external challenge that you can simply solve your way through. That is because it is a test. The first quarter moon arriving today is the cycle's first real moment of reckoning. The moment when the intention set at the new moon meets the actual world, with all of its complexity and resistance and inconvenient timing. And the question the universe is quietly asking is no longer, will you begin? But do you actually mean it? Most people won't understand why April 4th feels harder than the days immediately after the new moon did. They'll attribute the tension to circumstances, to the specific difficulty of whatever obstacle has appeared in their path, to bad timing or bad luck, or the familiar internal narrative that explains pressure as evidence of being on the wrong track. And because they attribute it to circumstances rather than recognizing it as the cycle's natural and necessary first test, they'll respond to it from the wrong place, from frustration or doubt, or the instinct to abandon the direction before the test has finished revealing what the test was actually for. This is the mistake that April 4th is specifically designed to invite, and avoiding it, responding to the first quarter moon's pressure consciously rather than reactively, is the specific work that this day is asking of you. To understand what the first quarter moon is doing and why it arrives with the particular quality of pressure it carries, you have to understand the architecture of a lunar cycle. Not in a technical or academic way, in the felt, lived, ordinary way that the cycle's phases are constantly shaping the quality of the energy available in daily life. The new moon is initiation, pure beginning, the seed going into the ground in the dark, before any evidence of growth, before any external confirmation that the direction is right. The new moon asks only one thing: are you willing to begin? And the Aries new moon, 2 days after the most extraordinary astrological convergence of the year, carried the added weight of everything the retrograde had been building and preparing, making the beginning not just powerful but earned. The people who made their beginning at the Aries new moon made it on the most solid foundation available in the current astrological period. The seed that went in had been prepared by weeks of honest interior work. It had real roots, but roots, no matter how solid, encounter resistance when they reach into unknown soil. And the first quarter moon, arriving 7 days after the new moon, is the phase in which that resistance arrives. The phase in which the growing thing, having established its initial direction in the dark, first encounters the conditions of the light, of the external world, of the people, circumstances, and dynamics that were not present when the intention was formed in the quiet of the new moon, and that are now present with all of their complexity and all of their own requirements and all of their inherent resistance to the change your new direction represents. The first quarter moon always brings some version of friction. The direction set at the new moon meets the first real test of whether it has the structural integrity to survive contact with the external world. And how you respond to that friction, whether you double down on the direction from a place of honest commitment or capitulate to the friction from a place of reactive doubt, is the most important choice the lunar cycle has presented since the new moon itself. The specific quality of the pressure arriving today is worth describing in detail, because recognizing it for what it is changes how you meet it. The friction of the first quarter moon in an Aries cycle tends to be direct, slightly confrontational, and frustratingly personal. Aries is the sign of the direct challenge, and the first quarter moon in the sign following the Aries new moon carries that directness into its testing energy. The friction arrives as something that specifically challenges the direction you chose. The obstacle is not incidental, it is targeted. It lands precisely on the thing you were most committed to, or on the relationship most relevant to the new direction, or on the area of your life where the change you are trying to make is most vulnerable to being destabilized. This targeting can feel, if you're not prepared for it, like the universe is opposing your direction. Like the resistance arriving today is evidence that the direction was wrong, or premature, or more difficult than the new moon's clarity made it seem. And if you receive the targeting that way, it will do exactly what any well-designed test does when failed. It will return you to the starting point. The doubt will be convincing enough to pull you back from the beginning you made. The friction will seem insurmountable enough to justify deferring the direction until conditions are more favorable. And the momentum built through the extraordinary events of late March will dissipate back into the uncertainty that preceded it. But if you recognize the targeting for what it actually is, not opposition, but examination, the quality of your response changes completely. The friction is arriving at exactly the point of your commitment, because that point of commitment is what needs to be tested before the cycle can go deeper. Before the direction can become real in a sustained way, rather than just in the energized first days of a new moon. The test is not asking you to abandon the direction. It is asking whether the direction is something you actually mean, rather than something you felt in the momentum of the Aries new moon, and are now discovering requires more from you than the momentum alone can provide. The answer to that question, do you actually mean it, is what today's friction is waiting to hear. And the answer has to be given through action rather than through intention, through how you respond to the pressure rather than through what you tell yourself you're committed to. There is a particular emotional signature that the first quarter moon carries in the early phase of a cycle that began with the unusual preparation of this one, and it is worth naming because many people experience it without understanding what it is. The feeling is the combination of certainty and doubt simultaneously. The direction still feels right. The clarity that arrived with the Aries new moon has not disappeared, but it is now accompanied by a doubt that wasn't present at the new moon. A doubt about the timing, or the method, or the cost, or the response from others, or the genuine possibility that what seemed clear and achievable from the vantage point of the new moon is more complex and more demanding in the reality of the cycle's first week. This combination, clarity and doubt together, neither canceling the other, is deeply disorienting if you don't understand that it is the natural state of the first quarter moon. It is the state of a direction that is real enough to be meeting actual resistance rather than theoretical resistance. A direction that isn't generating any doubt is typically a direction that isn't generating any genuine engagement with the external world. The doubt is not a sign of wrongness. It is a sign of contact. The direction has made contact with the actual complexity of what it will take to bring it into full expression, and the complexity is registering accurately in your awareness as resistance that requires something real from you. The appropriate response to this combination is not to resolve it before acting. The appropriate response is to act from the clarity rather than from the doubt, while holding both honestly. To bring the direction forward, in the specific, concrete, next step form that today's resistance is asking you to take, from the place of genuine commitment rather than from the place of momentum alone, precisely because momentum alone is not sufficient to carry it through the friction of the first quarter moon. What carries it through is intention. Deliberate, honest, actively chosen intention, the kind that knows the complexity and moves toward the direction anyway. The tension of today will likely show up in your life as one of a small number of very recognizable forms, and naming them makes them easier to navigate rather than easier to avoid. The most common form is the conversation that becomes difficult in exactly the way that tests whether you mean what you said you meant at the new moon. A person relevant to your new direction who pushes back. A response that doesn't carry the receptivity you were hoping for. An exchange that reveals, in its friction, that the change you are making has implications for the people around you that they are not simply going to adapt to without some honest reckoning. This friction is not evidence that the direction is wrong. It is the direction's first contact with the reality of the relationships it will need to navigate. How you hold the direction in the conversation, whether you abandon it to avoid the friction, or maintain it with the honest, direct, Aries cycle courage it requires, is the test. The second common form is the obstacle to the plan. The circumstance that intervenes between the intention set at the new moon and the execution of what that intention requires. The timing that doesn't cooperate, or the resource that isn't available, or the external condition that makes the path forward more complex than anticipated. The temptation here is to interpret the obstacle as a sign, as the universe's way of indicating that the direction is premature or the method is wrong. Some obstacles are signs. Most first quarter moon obstacles are friction, the cycle's way of asking whether the commitment is solid enough to adapt to the reality of the path rather than requiring the path to present itself without obstacles. The third form is internal, and the hardest to navigate because it happens entirely within you and is therefore most susceptible to being rationalized into conviction rather than examined as pressure. It is the return of the doubt you thought the new moon had resolved. The old question resurfacing with new urgency. Are you sure? Is this really the right direction? Is it not too much, or too soon, or too risky given everything else in your life? This internal friction is the first quarter moon's most precise test. Whether the clarity built through the retrograde period and sharpened at the Aries new moon is solid enough to hold against the return of the old uncertainty when the momentum of the initiating moment has passed and the ordinary reality of maintaining the direction begins. Here is the twist in this story, the thing that changes everything about how you understand the pressure of April 4th. The first quarter moon is not an obstacle in your cycle. It is a gift. Every direction that makes it through the first quarter moon intact, every commitment that meets the friction of this phase and holds, emerges from the test stronger, more grounded, more genuinely integrated into who you are and how you operate than it was at the new moon. The new moon's beginning was powerful, but it was still largely interior. Intention, clarity, the first external steps. The first quarter moon's test is the moment when the interior commitment becomes exterior reality. When the direction survives contact with actual circumstances and actual people and actual complexity and remains intact on the other side. When what you began at the new moon demonstrates, through the friction of the test, that it has real structural integrity rather than just the structural integrity of an untested intention. The directions that don't survive the first quarter moon, the commitments that collapse at the first real friction, were not actually the right directions for this cycle. That sounds harsh, and it can feel like a harsh discovery in the moment when the doubt wins and the direction is abandoned. But what the first quarter moon's friction reveals, when a direction collapses under it, is that the direction was built more on the momentum of the initiating energy than on the genuine conviction of a change that was ready to be made. And a direction that requires the momentum of an Aries new moon to sustain, it will always collapse when the momentum subsides, regardless of when the collapse happens. The first quarter moon simply makes the collapse happen early, while the cycle is still young enough for a different, more honest direction to be chosen and developed through the remaining arc. The gift of the first quarter moon, then, is the truthfulness of its test. It is the earliest possible moment at which you receive honest information about whether your beginning was built on real ground or on momentum alone. And the honest response to that information, whatever it reveals, positions you better for the rest of the cycle than the alternative of deferring the test until later. The practical question for today is straightforward, even if the answer requires courage. What is the specific pressure you are feeling right now? And what honest response does the commitment you made at the Aries new moon demand from you in response to it? Not the convenient response. Not the one that avoids the friction by deferring the direction. Not the one that abandons the commitment because maintaining it requires more from you right now than you plan to give. The honest response, the one that comes from the clarity built through weeks of retrograde preparation and sharpened at the new moon, applied directly to the specific pressure presenting itself today. If the pressure is a difficult conversation, the honest response is to have it from the place of genuine commitment rather than from the place of managing the other person's reaction. If the pressure is an obstacle to the plan, the honest response is to find the adaptation that carries the direction through the obstacle rather than using the obstacle as permission to abandon the direction. If the pressure is internal doubt returning, the honest response is to hold the clarity of the new moon against the doubt and choose the clarity, not because the doubt is wrong to exist, but because the clarity was earned through more honest and demanding work than the doubt was, and it deserves to be the thing you act from. The response to the first quarter moon's pressure does not have to be perfect. It does not have to resolve everything or eliminate the friction. It has to be genuine, coming from the real place rather than the managed place, coming from the version of you that the retrograde was building, the more honest, more self-knowing, more clear-eyed version, rather than from the version that finds ways to avoid the uncomfortable truth of what maintaining a genuine direction actually requires. That genuine response, given today in the face of the first quarter moon's pressure, is what carries the new cycle through its first test and into the fuller development that the remaining weeks of April hold. It is the act that demonstrates to yourself and to the cycle and to everyone in your life who will experience the consequences of whether you mean what you began, that the beginning made at the Aries new moon was real. April 4th is not the most dramatic day of the cycle. The new moon was more powerful. The extraordinary events of March 20th were more announced. The Aries new moon was more urgent. April 4th is quieter than all of those. Pressure without fanfare, friction without drama, a test that arrives in the ordinary language of difficult circumstances and internal doubt. And that quietness is part of why it matters as much as it does. The loud days are easy to recognize as significant. The quiet days of real pressure are where most people lose what the loud days built. The first quarter moon, arriving in the unremarkable midweek of early April, will determine for most people whether the extraordinary preparation of March produces something lasting or something temporary. Whether the beginning made at the Aries new moon becomes a genuine new direction in their lives, or becomes a memory of a powerful moment that didn't quite convert into sustained change. You are aware of today in a way that most people are not. You understand the pressure you are feeling as the cycle's natural first test, rather than as evidence of something going wrong. And that awareness, that understanding of what is actually happening, is your specific advantage in meeting today's challenge. Use it. Respond to the pressure from the place of honest, deliberate, new moon level commitment, rather than from the reactive, doubt-driven, friction-avoiding place that the first quarter moon is specifically designed to invite. Hold the direction you chose when the clarity was at its highest. Maintain the commitment when maintaining it costs something real. Because the test of April 4th is not asking whether you can begin. The beginning has already been made. It is asking whether you can continue, specifically, deliberately, in the face of the first real friction, and the rest of April is waiting to be shaped by your answer.